A smiling woman works in an unusual volunteer center. Here, they help former criminals return to normal life. Nishimura Mako knows firsthand how hard it is to break free from the nets of the criminal world. After all, once she was the only female yakuza in Japan. Numerous tattoos all over her body and the absence of a little finger testify to this dark page of her biography. When I cut off my little finger, it wasn't just painful, it was hellishly painful. But that's the price of a mistake in the yakuza world, she said. For many years, Nishimura Mako was a full member of one of the most influential yakuza clans. In the criminal world, she was nicknamed Yubiotoshi no Maijin, which literally means finger-cutting master. And yet, it seemed that fate had prepared a completely different life for Nishimura. She was born in 1966 in a family of high-ranking officials and was supposed to follow in her parents' footsteps. However, her father was a real domestic tyrant and brutally punished his daughter for the slightest offense. According to some strange Japanese traditions, he punished her, including with a bamboo stick, and this caused her rejection of her parents, a rebellious spirit, a desire to be outside the family. And she constantly met with various riffraff, rode motorcycles, participated in various fights, and thus became an absolute outcast. To put it in simple terms, at the age of 16, Nishimura Mako ran away from home and joined a motorcycle hooligan gang. At that time, the semi-criminal subculture of Bosozoku, which translates as aggressive racing clan, was gaining popularity in Japan. There were hundreds of groups of reckless bikers in the country who staged bloody showdowns among themselves. They called themselves the New Kamikazes and wore clothes resembling the uniforms of suicide pilots from World War II. Later, many Bosozoku joined the yakuza. The leaders of Japanese criminal clans used the desperate motorcyclists for robbery attacks. Nishimura Mako also came into the sight of criminal bosses. At some point, a friend called her and said she was in trouble, and Ms. Nishimura found nothing better than to take a baseball bat and go to the showdown. She arranged a massacre there, and it was then that the yakuza boss summoned her, so to speak, to the carpet. And contrary to what might seem, that he would punish her in some way, he, on the contrary, said that you are a woman, of course, but you need to be a yakuza. Nishimura Mako agreed to work for the criminal group. She unquestioningly carried out any minor orders of the leaders, and over time earned the right to become a full member of the gang on an equal footing with men. For the criminal world of Japan, this was an unprecedented event. In the yakuza, women were not perceived as equals. They were only in secondary roles. If it was the wife of a yakuza member, then she had to do everything to support his life, his household, his well-being. Some of them were the sexual concubines of the bandits, and they never held any leadership positions. Perhaps the only exception was Fumiko Tuko, the wife of the third head of the largest yakuza clan, Yamaguchi-gumi. After her husband's death in 1981, she temporarily led the group until the successor to the boss was released from prison. She, of course, was not officially the head of the clan, but because she had long been involved in the affairs indirectly, and because she had been with her husband for so many years, and thanks to her loyalty, including to her husband, she was highly respected in the clan, and therefore no one was against her taking the reins of power and, albeit in a peculiar way, but still leading. But the only woman in Japan who was accepted into the criminal clan on an equal footing with men became Nishimura Mako. Thanks to her diligence, strong character, and fearlessness, she earned the right to undergo the secret yakuza initiation rite, Sakazuki. Such an altar is made, a sake cup is placed, salt is poured, and 2 fish are laid. One of them must be larger than the other. This indicates that the smaller one is the new member of this mafia structure. An old member of this mafia group pours sake, takes a sip, and passes it to the new entrant. He takes a sip of his portion of sake, wraps the cup in ritual paper, and puts it in his pocket. This rite divided Nishimura Mako's life into before and after. Having become a full member of the yakuza, she controlled prostitution and the trade in prohibited substances, acted as a mediator in disputes between competing groups. Once, as punishment for her gang's collective failure, Nishimura cut off her little finger on her left hand. The terrible custom of voluntary finger amputation among the yakuza as a sign of loyalty to the clan is called yubitsume. The practice of cutting off fingers was taken, like much else, by Japanese yakuza from previous eras, and thus they refer to the samurai, who grasped the sword with 3 fingers, one of which was the little finger. And indeed, when you don't have a little finger, it's very difficult not only to hold a sword, but actually any object. That's why it's such a sign that you should rely more not on yourself, but primarily now not on the sword you have, but on the clan, on the family. Nishimura Mako amputated her little finger so quickly and skillfully that later other members of the group turned to her for help, those who could not perform the yubitsume rite themselves. Thus, the female yakuza received her terrible nickname, Finger-Cutting Master. She was in the gang for a long 10 years, but when she turned 30, she decided it was time to quit the criminal world and ran away from her clan. However, Nishimura did not stop breaking the law. Unfortunately, when you get into this family, it's very difficult to get out. And even if you get out, your habits still remain. You worked in a certain field for a long time, and it's very difficult to give up what you've been doing for so long. Therefore, unfortunately, she was unable to completely give up her old, let's call it family. And on top of that, she still continued to do some things behind the back of her former family. The same drugs that she dealt with while being a member of the family. In addition to everything, the female yakuza had a romance with the leader of a rival gang. She married him and gave birth to 2 children. However, family life did not work out. Constant quarrels between the spouses led to a difficult divorce. As a result, Nishimura Mako was left with nothing. After quarreling with her husband, she was practically kicked out, including from the gang, but she lost her children, whom her husband took for himself, simply throwing her out, so to speak, onto the street. There was no one to turn to for help. Nishimura Mako had long severed ties with her relatives. The criminal family rejected her, and she never managed to build a real one. Plus, she had tattoos on her body, which prevented her from getting a normal job. As is known, tattoos in Japan are still considered a symbol of the yakuza, because it was they who tattooed themselves. And a tattooed woman is not only in principle a great rarity for Japan, a unique case. And also, these associations could not allow her to find a job. Nevertheless, Nishimura Mako managed to return to normal life. She got a job at a company that demolishes buildings, saved money, and bought a small house. The woman spends almost all her free time at the volunteer center, where she helps others who have stumbled to get back on the right path. Under her guidance, former yakuza clean the streets, take care of the disabled and the elderly, and in the evening, they all gather for dinner. No one likes to remember their past here, especially Nishimura Mako, who even at this table remains the only woman among men.